Jake Miller stepped off the Greyhound bus in Lincoln, Nebraska, the late August heat wrapping around him like a suffocating blanket. After 2 grueling years deployed with the National Guard in Afghanistan, he was finally home, his weathered duffel bag slung over one shoulder. The familiar scent of cornfields and diesel from passing pickup trucks grounded him, but his heart raced with anticipation. He hadn't seen his wife, Laura, or their kids, Ethan, 15, and Sophie, 13, in person for 18 months, relying on spotty video calls and her letters, which had grown shorter and colder over time. Jake had chalked it up to the strain of distance, convincing himself that tonight at their modest ranch-style home on the edge of town, they'd rebuild what time had worn thin. He pulled out his phone, expecting a flurry of texts from Laura, maybe a "can't wait to see you," or a photo of the kids holding a welcome sign, like she'd done after his first tour. Instead, his screen lit up with a single message, sent an hour ago. "Don't come home. I've changed the locks. The kids are better off without you. We're done." The words hit like shrapnel, slicing through the hope he'd carried across continents. Jake stood frozen on the cracked sidewalk outside the bus station, the hum of cicadas and distant cheers from a Friday night football game fading into a dull roar in his ears. His mind raced, replaying their last call 3 weeks ago. Laura had seemed distracted, her smile tight, but she'd blamed work stress at the county clerk's office. Had he missed something? Their 14-year marriage hadn't been perfect. Deployments strained it, and Laura's impatience with his guard duties had sparked arguments. But this? Divorce out of nowhere claiming the kids didn't want him? It didn't add up. Ethan, his quiet, bookish son, had mailed him a sci-fi novel during deployment, scribbling, "Read this, Dad. We'll talk when you're back." Sophie, his firecracker daughter, had sent goofy TikToks to keep him laughing. The kids rejecting him felt like a lie, and Jake's gut, honed by years of assessing threats in war zones, screamed that Laura was hiding something. He typed a response, fingers trembling. "If that's what you want, I'll respect it. For now." To anyone else, it might have sounded like surrender, but those who knew Jake, his squad mates, his old high school football coach, would recognize the steel beneath. In combat, Jake was the guy who stayed calm when IEDs detonated, the one who planned 3 moves ahead while others panicked. For now was his way of saying this wasn't over, it was just the opening salvo. He pocketed his phone and hailed a cab, not to the home where Laura and the kids supposedly no longer needed him, but to a cheap motel off I-80, a neon-lit dive where truckers and drifters crashed. In the motel's dim lobby, Jake made a call. "Carolyn Tate," a sharp voice answered. Carolyn was Lincoln's best family law attorney, known for tearing through opponents like a combine through corn. "It's Jake Miller. I'm back in town, and I need you. Tonight." Carolyn didn't hesitate. "Heard you were due back. Didn't expect trouble this fast. My office, 1 hour." Jake hung up, staring at the flickering TV in the corner playing a local news segment about the county fair. Laura's face flashed in his mind, her auburn hair, her laugh that once lit up their Sunday barbecues. Then the text burned through again. "The kids are better off without you." He clenched his jaw, shoving the hurt into a mental lockbox, a trick he'd learned to survive ambushes. This wasn't just a breakup. It was a betrayal, and Jake Miller didn't lose battles. As the cab pulled up, he slung his duffel bag over his shoulder, the weight of his M4 rifle replaced by a new mission. Laura thought she could erase him from their life, but she didn't know the man she'd demarried, or the lengths he'd go to protect his family. By morning, Lincoln's small-town gossip mill would start churning, and Jake would be ready to turn Laura's lies into her undoing. Jake Miller sat in the cramped, fluorescent-lit office of Carolyn Tate, Lincoln's most formidable family law attorney, the hum of an old air conditioner barely cutting through the late August heat. The motel's thin walls and stale coffee still clung to him, but his focus was razor-sharp, honed by years of navigating chaos in Afghanistan. Laura's text, "Don't come home. The kids are better off without you. We're done," looped in his mind, each word fueling a cold fury he channeled into strategy. He'd spent the cab ride to Carolyn S. office replaying their marriage, the early years of barbecues and school plays, Laura's growing resentment during his deployments, and the cryptic distance in her recent calls. This wasn't just a divorce, it was a calculated ambush, and Jake was done being blindsided. Carolyn, a wiry woman in her late 40s with steel-gray hair and eyes that could spot a lie from across a courtroom, leaned back in her leather chair, sizing Jake up. "You look like hell, Miller," she said, her Nebraska drawl blunt but not unkind. "Heard you were back from the sandbox. Didn't expect a war at home this fast." Jake slid his phone across her desk, Laura's text glowing on the screen. "She sent this an hour after I landed. Changed the locks. Says the kids don't want me. I need to know what I'm up against." Carolyn's lips pursed as she read, her expression hardening. "This ain't just cold, it's surgical. She waited till your boots hit Nebraska soil to gut you. That's not impulse, that's a plan." Jake nodded, his jaw tight. "I need options, Carolyn. Legal, financial, whatever it takes. And I need to know if there's someone else." Carolyn's eyes glinted, a predator catching a scent. "You think she's got a side piece?" "My gut says yes," Jake replied. "She's not acting alone. The kids, Ethan and Sophie, they wouldn't turn on me like she claims. Someone's in my house, and I want to know who." Carolyn scribbled notes, her pen moving like a scalpel. "Smart man. Most guys in your shoes would be banging on their front door, begging or yelling. You're playing chess. Good." For the next hour, they mapped out what Carolyn called the scorched earth starter pack. First, they'd freeze the joint bank accounts Jake and Laura shared, citing potential marital asset dissipation, a move that would choke off Laura S.'s ability to spend freely without court approval. Jake had noticed odd charges during deployment, $500 at a boutique, $2,000 on home repairs, but assumed Laura was sprucing up their ranch-style house. Now, those transactions screamed red flags. Carolyn also filed an emergency motion for temporary custody, arguing Laura's lockout was parental alienation, a bold play to ensure Jake's access to Ethan and Sophie. "This'll rattle her," Carolyn said, grinning. "She thinks you're shell-shocked and broken. She's about to learn you're a goddamn landmine." Jake's next move was a call to Nate Larson, his oldest friend and a former guard buddy who left the service to run a mechanic shop in Lincoln. They'd grown up tossing footballs in cornfields, enlisted together, and trusted each other with their lives. Over beers at a dive bar off O Street, Jake laid out the situation, his voice steady despite the ache in his chest. "Nate, I need eyes on my house. Who's coming and going? What cars are parked overnight? Laura's not doing this alone, and I need proof." Nate leaned back, his flannel shirt straining against his broad shoulders, and let out a low whistle. "Jesus, Jake, I figured Laura was stressed, but this? You think she's shacking up?" Jake's eyes darkened. "I think she's been planning this for months, maybe longer." Nate agreed to stake out the house, using his beat-up F-150 to blend into the suburban sprawl. "I'll get you names, plates, whatever's there," he said, clapping Jake's shoulder. "I'm sorry, man. This ain't right." Jake nodded, the betrayal sinking deeper, but he refused to let it cloud his focus. Back at the motel, he lay on the lumpy bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, Laura's text burning behind his eyes. His phone buzzed, Laura calling. He let it ring, then vibrate with texts. "Where are you? You can't just vanish like this. Answer me." Each message was a crack in her facade, proof she hadn't expected him to slip her trap so cleanly. By midnight, Nate sent a text. "Got something. Silver Lexus in your driveway, not Laura's. Man went inside, lights off upstairs, sending pics." Jake opened the images, his heart pounding. A tall guy, slick hair, expensive jacket, stepping out of the Lexus, and greeted by Laura at the door, not with a hesitant kiss, but a familiar hug, like they'd done this 100 times. Nate's follow-up. "Plates registered to Derek Vaughn, realtor, big shot at church. Been at your place 3 nights this week." Jake's grip tightened on the phone, the pieces clicking. Derek Vaughn, the guy who'd glad-handed at community fundraisers, always lingering too long near Laura. Jake didn't sleep that night, but it wasn't from pain. It was purpose. Laura thought she could rewrite their life, paint him as the absent father, while she played house with a small-town hustler. But Jake was a soldier, trained to dismantle threats with precision. By morning, Carolyn would have the account freeze in motion. Nate would dig deeper on Derek, and Lincoln-ass gossip mill, fueled by diner waitresses and church ladies, would start whispering about Laura, his new friend. Jake wasn't just fighting for his kids. He was fighting for the truth, and he'd make sure Laura's lies crumbled under the weight of her own choices. Jake Miller sat in a cracked vinyl booth at Rosie's Diner, a Lincoln staple where the coffee was strong and the gossip stronger, his phone buzzing with Nate Larson's latest findings. The neon, "Open 24 hours" sign buzzed overhead, casting a red glow over the faded checkered floor, as waitresses swapped stories about the county fair. It was 2 a.m., 24 hours since Laura's text. "Don't come home. The kids are better off without you. We're done," had shattered Jake's homecoming. Nate's photos from last night, showing Derek Vaughn's silver Lexus in Jake's driveway and Laura's familiar embrace, burned in his mind. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was a calculated rewrite of his family, and Jake was determined to uncover every lie. Nate slid into the booth, his flannel shirt rumpled from hours in his F-150, staking out Jake's suburban home. "You're not gonna like this," he said, voice low, sliding a manila envelope across the table. "Derek Vaughn's been at your place more than you have these past 15 months. Jake opened the envelope, his pulse quickening. Photos showed Derek, the slick-haired realtor who led prayers at church, carrying grocery bags into Jake's house, tossing a football with Ethan in the backyard, and driving Sophie to what looked like a school dance. One shot, time-stamped a week ago, caught Derek and Laura laughing on the porch, her hand on his arm, their ease screaming a relationship far beyond a fling. Nate S. notes were scrawled on a legal pad. Derek S. Lexus there 4 or 5 nights a week. Neighbors say he's Uncle Derek to the kids. Been going on since June last year. 15 months. While Jake was dodging mortar fire in Kandahar, Laura had let Derek Vaughn, a man who de-shaken Jake's hand at a church picnic 2 years ago, slide into his life like a vulture. The kids' involvement hurt worse than the affair. Ethan, quiet and loyal, had sent Jake books during deployment. Sophie, his spark plug, had mailed drawings of their dog. Laura's claim that they were better off without him was a knife, but seeing Derek play dad, tossing footballs, driving Sophie, twisted it deeper. Jake's jaw clenched, his training kicking in, turning pain into fuel. "What else?" he asked, voice steady but eyes dark. Nate leaned forward, glancing at a passing waitress. "I dug into Derek's business like you asked. Guy's a realtor, big talker at community board meetings, but his deals are shady. Pulled some public records. Derek's tied to a string of property flips, buying cheap foreclosures, inflating values with fake appraisals, then selling to out-of-state investors. Looks like he's using Laura's county clerk access to fast-track paperwork, maybe dodge taxes." Jake's mind raced. Laura, a stickler for rules at her job, risking her career for Derek? It didn't add up until Nate added, "Checked your joint account like you said. Laura's been funneling money, $3,000 here, $5,000 there, for consulting fees to Derek's LLC. Also, a $10,000 loan in her name, taken out 3 months ago, went straight to one of his shell companies." The numbers hit like a punch. Jake had trusted Laura with their finances, assuming her boutique splurges and home repairs were harmless. Now it was clear. She was bankrolling Derek's schemes, using their savings, their kids' future, to fund a new life. Worse, Derek's Uncle Derek act wasn't just charm. He was grooming Ethan and Sophie, buying their trust with outings and gifts. Nate's final photo showed Derek handing Sophie a shiny new phone at a county fair booth, Laura beaming beside him. "Kids seem to like him," Nate said, wincing. "Sophie calls him by name on her Instagram. Ethan's quieter, but he's not pushing back." Jake's phone buzzed again. Laura texting, "You froze our accounts? You're pathetic, Jake. Just walk away." The venom confirmed Carolyn Tate's move had landed. Freezing the joint accounts had choked Laura's cash flow, and her panic meant Jake was hitting nerves. He didn't reply, letting her stew. Instead, he called Carolyn, who was burning the midnight oil. "Nate's got proof," Jake said. "Derek Vaughn's been living in my house for 15 months using Laura's job and our money for some property scam. I need to know how deep this goes." Carolyn's voice crackled with glee. "Oh, honey, you're giving me Christmas in August. Send me everything. We'll bury them. Back at the motel, Jake spread Nate's photos across the bed, each one a shard of his broken life. Laura S.'s laugh in the porch photo haunted him, the same laugh from their first date at a Lincoln hayride, now weaponized by betrayal. Derek's role wasn't just lover, he was a parasite, sinking claws into Jake's family and finances. The community angle stung, too. Derek, a church deacon, had Lincoln's trust, his face plastered on real estate signs and charity boards. Exposing him wouldn't just be personal, it'd be a small-town earthquake. Jake's resolve hardened. Laura thought she could erase him, but every lie she told, about the kids, the money, Derek, was a thread he'd pull until her world unraveled. Tomorrow, Carolyn would dig into Derek's LLCs, Nate would tail him to a rumored business meeting, and Jake would start whispering to the right people, starting with the church gossip chain. The mask was off and Jake was ready to show Lincoln who Laura and Derek really were. Jake Miller leaned against the chipped counter of his motel room, the neon glow from the I-80 sign seeping through the blinds, as Carolyn Tate's voice crackled over speakerphone. It was 10 a.m., 2 days since Laura's text. "Don't come home. The kids are better off without you. We're done," had turned his homecoming into a war zone. Nate's photos of Derek Vaughn, the church deacon, and realtor playing Uncle Derek in Jake's house, had confirmed the affair, but the financial bombshell was worse. Laura had funneled their savings into Derek S. shady property flips, including a $10,000 loan tied to his LLC. Now Carolyn was about to drop a legal hammer that would make Laura and Derek feel the walls closing in. "Jake, you're gonna love this," Carolyn said, her Nebraska drawl laced with glee. "That joint account freeze we filed? It's done. Laura can't touch a dime without court approval. But here's the kicker. I pulled your mortgage records. Laura took out a $50,000 home equity loan 6 months ago, claiming it was for renovations. Guess where it went? Straight to Derek's shell company, Midwest Ventures LLC. No receipts, no renovations. Just a paper trail leading to his scam." Jake's grip tightened on his coffee mug, the betrayal sinking deeper. Their ranch-style home, where Ethan built model rockets and Sophie practiced cheer routines, was now collateral for Derek's hustle. Laura hadn't just cheated, she'd gambled their family's future. Carolyn wasn't done. "I've got a forensic accountant, Tina Brooks, digging into Derek's LLCs. She found Laura's name on 3 transactions as consultant, each tied to property flips. Here's the fun part. Laura used her county clerk access to backdate filings, helping Derek dodge $15,000 in property taxes. That's fraud, Jake, and it's traceable." Jake's mind raced. Laura, the woman who'd once scolded him for a late credit card payment, was neck-deep in Derek's schemes, risking her job and their kids' stability. "What's our move?" he asked, his voice calm but edged with steel. Carolyn chuckled. "We've already filed to flag the loan as marital asset dissipation. Laura's lawyer will scream, but we're also requesting an audit of her clerk filings. She's trapped, and she knows it." By noon, the fallout hit. Jake's phone lit up with a voicemail from Harold Grayson, Laura's attorney, a pompous Lincoln fixture known for defending drunk councilmen. "Mr. Miller," Grayson barked, "this account freeze and loan dispute is financial abuse. You're destabilizing your children's home. Withdraw these motions or we'll bury you in court." Jake played the message for Carolyn, who laughed so hard she snorted. "Abuse? That's rich. Laura's the one draining your kid's future for her boyfriend's scam. Grayson's sweating because he knows we've got her dead to rights." Jake smirked, his soldier's instinct kicking in. Grayson's bluster was a sign of weakness, and Jake wasn't here to negotiate. He was here to win. He met Nate at a park near Lincoln's Community Center, where families grilled burgers and kids chased frisbees, a cruel contrast to Jake's fractured world. Nate had new intel from a buddy at the county bank. "Derek's been kiting checks between his LLCs to cover cash flow gaps," Nate said, tossing a pebble into a pond. "That $50,000 loan from Laura? It paid off a creditor who was about to sue him. Derek's empire is a house of cards, and Laura's signature is all over it." Jake's chest tightened, picturing Laura signing loan papers while he was overseas, telling Ethan and Sophie he'd abandoned them. The lie about the kids hurt most. Ethan's sci-fi books, Sophie's TikToks, proof they still loved him. now tainted by Derek's gifts and Laura's manipulation. Jake's next call was to Carolyn, who'd just gotten a panicked email from Grayson offering to discuss terms if Jake unfroze the accounts. "He's folding already," Carolyn said. "Laura's freaking out because her credit cards bounced at the grocery store this morning. Small-town life, Jake. Word spreading." Indeed, Lincoln's gossip mill was churning. A waitress at Rosie's Diner had overheard Laura arguing with Derek at a coffee shop, her voice shrill about fixing this mess. Church ladies whispered about Derek's Lexus parked at Jake's house, their disapproval spreading like wildfire. Jake didn't need to say much. Laura and Derek were unraveling themselves. Back at the motel, Jake stared at a photo of Laura and the kids from last year's county fair, her smile now a mask hiding a year of lies. The $50,000 loan wasn't just money. It was Ethan's college fund, Sophie's cheer camp, their family's safety net, all sacrificed for Derek's scams. Jake's pain was raw, but his resolve was iron. Carolyn's audit would expose Laura's fraud. Nate's bank contact would trace Derek's checks, and Jake would keep the pressure on, silent but relentless. Laura thought she could outmaneuver him, but every move she made tightened the noose. By tomorrow, Grayson would beg for a deal, and Jake would be ready to dictate terms, not for revenge, but for his kids, his home, and the truth Lincoln deserved to see. Jake Miller sat at a wobbly table in the back of O Street's Rusty Nail, a Lincoln dive bar where the jukebox played Johnny Cash, and the air smelled of stale beer and regret. It was late afternoon, 3 days since Laura's text, "Don't come home. The kids are better off without you. We're done," had upended his life. The sting of her betrayal, amplified by Nate's photos of Derek Vaughn playing Uncle Derek, and Laura's $50,000 home equity loan funneled into Derek's scams, burned fresh. But Jake wasn't here to drown his pain in whiskey. He was meeting Carolyn Tate and Karen Walsh, a private investigator with a reputation for digging up secrets that could topple small-town empires. Carolyn had called an hour ago, her voice tight with urgency. "Karen's got something big on Derek and Laura. You need to hear this in person." Karen, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with a smoker's rasp and a leather jacket, slid a thick folder across the table. "Your wife's been lying longer than you think, Miller," she said, her eyes scanning the bar for eavesdroppers. Jake's stomach churned as he opened the folder, revealing a paper trail that stretched back years. Karen's investigation, cross-referencing county records, social media, and old college yearbooks, painted a damning picture. Derek Vaughn wasn't just Laura's recent lover. He was her boyfriend from her University of Nebraska days, before Jake met her at a county fair 15 years ago. They dated for 2 years, parted after a messy breakup, and reconnected 2 years ago at a Lincoln Chamber of Commerce event, when Jake was deployed. "Laura never mentioned Derek to you?" Carolyn asked, her pen tapping the table. Jake shook his head, his mind reeling. Laura had always framed her college years as a blur of late-night study sessions, never hinting at a serious ex. Yet Karen's photos showed Derek and Laura at a 2008 college tailgate, arm in arm, and a 2023 chamber event, their smiles too familiar. The folder held more, emails between Laura and Derek, starting 24 months ago, planning a fresh start once Jake's deployment ended. The kicker was a real estate contract, buried in county records, for an $800,000 farmstead on Lincoln A.S. outskirts, a sprawling property with a red barn and acres of cornfields. Laura had used her county clerk access to expedite the deed transfer, listing Derek's Midwest Ventures LLC as the buyer, funded by a web of fake loans and tax-evaded profits from Derek's property flips. Karen leaned forward, her voice low. "They weren't just shacking up, Jake. They planned to move there with Ethan and Sophie, sell your house and live the perfect family fantasy." The folder also held bank statements, flagged by Carolyn's accountant, Tina Brooks. Derek's LLC had siphoned $120,000 from Laura's accounts, $50,000 from the home equity loan, $70,000 in consulting fees over 18 months, all funneled into the farmstead purchase. Laura had backdated county filings to hide the LLC's tax liabilities, saving Derek $25,000 in penalties. "This is a house of cards," Carolyn said, her eyes gleaming. "One IRS tip, and Derek's done. Laura's complicity ties her to the fraud, too. Jake's mind flashed to Ethan and Sophie, oblivious to their mother's scheme, their lives about to be uprooted for a con man's dream. The thought of Sophie's cheer trophies and Ethan's rocket models left behind in a sold house fueled his resolve. Karen added a final twist. I tracked Derek's old college buddies. One, a barista now, said Derek bragged last year about winning Laura back and taking what's his. He knew you were deployed, Jake, and saw you as an obstacle. The words landed like a punch. Derek hadn't stumbled into Laura's life. He'd targeted her, exploiting their history to pull her into his web. Jake E.S. pain was raw. Laura E.S. choice to betray him for a past love hurt more than the affair itself. But his soldier's instinct took over, channeling grief into strategy. He looked at Carolyn. What's next? She grinned. We're filing a fraud complaint with the county, requesting an IRS audit on Derek's LLC. Laura's lawyer Grayson will lose it, but we've got enough to force a deposition. And we're not stopping there. I'm prepping to block the farmstead sale, citing forged signatures. Jake nodded, his jaw set. Back at the motel, he stared at a photo of Laura from their wedding, her smile now a ghost of deception. The farmstead wasn't just a property. It was Laura's attempt to rewrite history, to reclaim a life with Derek at the cost of Jake's family. Lincoln's gossip mill was already buzzing, with church ladies questioning Derek as business trips, and diner patrons eyeing Laura as strained smiles. Jake wouldn't let her bury him. Tomorrow, Carolyn would file the complaint. Karen would tail Derek's next investor meeting, and Jake would pull the threads of Laura S. lies until her and Derek S. dream collapsed under its own weight. Jake Miller sat on the edge of his motel bed, the hum of the I-80 traffic outside barely drowning out the ache in his chest. It was Friday evening, 4 days since Laura's text. Don't come home. The kids are better off without you. We're done. Had shattered his world. The revelations kept piling up. Derek Vaughn, Laura's college ex, playing Uncle Derek in Jake's home, their $50,000 home equity loan fueling his $800,000 farmstead scheme, and Laura's forged signatures tying her to felony fraud. But nothing cut deeper than the thought of Ethan and Sophie, his 13-year-old son and 15-year-old daughter caught in Laura's web of lies. Jake had avoided contacting them, fearing Laura's manipulation, but Carolyn Tate urged him to reach out. Those kids are your anchor, Jake, she'd said. Don't let Laura rewrite their truth. He opened his phone, heart pounding, and started a FaceTime call to Sophie, whose cheer practice should have just ended. The call rang, then connected, revealing Sophie's face, her blonde ponytail bouncing, her eyes wary but softening at the sight of him. Dad? She said, her voice a mix of surprise and caution, standing outside Lincoln High's football field, where Friday night lights glowed. Mom said you didn't want to come back. Jake's throat tightened, but he kept his voice steady. Sophie, that's not true. I've been fighting to get home to you and Ethan. Mom's keeping me out, and I need you to know why. Sophie's brows furrowed, her cheer uniform speckled with grass, as she listened to Jake explain Laura's lockout and Derek's role, careful not to overwhelm her with the fraud details. Sophie hesitated, then admitted. Mom said you picked the Army over us. Derek's been around a lot. He got me this new phone, said it was for school. Jake's jaw clenched, picturing Derek's slick smile handing Sophie the device, buying her trust. That phone's not about school, Soph, he said gently. Derek's trying to take my place and Mom's letting him. I'd never choose anything over you two. Sophie's eyes glistened, torn between loyalty to Laura and memories of Jake. Late-night ice cream runs, teaching her to throw a spiral. I don't know, Dad, she whispered. It's confusing. Jake nodded, his heart breaking but resolute. Just think about it. I'm here always. Next, Jake texted Ethan, who preferred messages over calls, his quiet nature mirroring Jake's. Hey, buddy, I'm back in Lincoln, but Mom's keeping me from home. She say anything about me? Ethan's reply came fast. She said you bailed on us. Derek's here all the time, got me a PS5. I don't trust him, Dad. He's fake. Jake's relief at Ethan's suspicion mixed with fury at Laura's lies. He typed back, I'd never bail, Ethan. Derek's not your dad. I am. Can we talk? Ethan agreed to meet at the library, a safe spot away from Laura's reach, where he studied sci-fi novels. At the Lincoln Library, Jake found Ethan in a corner, his lanky frame hunched over a worn copy of Dune. Ethan's eyes lit up, but his hug was hesitant, shadowed by doubt. "Mom said you didn't call because you were done with us," Ethan mumbled. Jake knelt, meeting his son's gaze. "Ethan, I called every week I could. Mom's been telling you stories to push me out. Derek's not who he seems. He's using Mom, and I'm fighting to protect you and Sophie." Ethan's face hardened, processing. "He tried to take me fishing like you do. I said no. Sophie likes him though. She posts his dumb gifs on TikTok." Jake's heart sank, but Ethan's defiance was a lifeline. They talked for an hour, Jake sharing memories, building Ethan's first rocket, their campfire stories, rebuilding trust. Ethan revealed Laura's rules. No mentioning Jake, only Derek's fun outings. "Sophie's confused, Dad," Ethan said. "She thinks Derek's cool, but I see him arguing with Mom when they think we're asleep." Jake nodded, his soldier's instinct sharpening. Laura's lies were cracking, and Ethan's loyalty was a wedge he could use. Back at the motel, Jake sent Sophie a text. "Love you, kiddo. Remember our pancake Sundays. I'm fighting for us." Her reply, a heart emoji, was small, but enough. Carolyn called, updating him. Karen Walsh had new footage of Derek meeting a shady investor at a bar, hinting at more fraud. Lincoln's gossip mill churned harder. Church ladies now snubbed Laura at coffee hour, and a diner patron had seen Derek's Lexus towed for unpaid tickets. Jake's kids were slipping from Laura's grip, and her world was fraying. Tomorrow he'd meet Carolyn to plan the fraud complaint's next steps, but tonight he felt a flicker of hope. Ethan's trust and Sophie's doubt were cracks in Laura's facade, and Jake would pry them open to reclaim his family, one truth at a time. The fellowship hall of First Lutheran Church buzzed with the clatter of casserole dishes and the murmur of Lincoln's tight-knit congregation gathered for the Sunday potluck. Laura stood near the dessert table, her smile strained as she arranged her famous lemon bars, trying to play the devoted mother and county clerk everyone knew. 5 days had passed since her text to Jake, "Don't come home. The kids are better off without you. We're done," sparked a firestorm. She hadn't counted on Carolyn Tate's legal maneuvers, Nate Larson's photos, or Karen Walsh's investigation exposing her affair with Derek Vaughn and their $800,000 farmstead scheme, built on forged loans and tax evasion. Now, whispers rippled through the crowd, and Laura's perfect facade was cracking under the weight of Lincoln's judgment. Pastor Elaine, a sharp-eyed woman who'd led the church for a decade, paused by the table, her usual warmth replaced by a curt nod. "Laura, we missed you at the Finance Committee meeting," she said, her tone clipped. The words were polite, but the subtext was clear. Rumors, fueled by Carolyn's strategic leaks, had reached the church. Nate had slipped a dossier to a deacon, detailing Derek's shady property flips and Laura's backdated filings, while Karen's bank records, showing Laura's $50,000 home equity loan funneled to Derek's LLC, made it to the Lincoln Journal-Star's editor via an anonymous tip. By morning, a front-page story. Local realtor tied to tax fraud probe had Derek A.'s face plastered across newsstands, with Laura's name as an involved county employee. The town was turning, and Laura was losing her grip. Congregants who once fawned over Laura's potluck contributions now avoided her gaze, clustering around Pastor Elaine to whisper about that realtor and poor Jake Miller back from deployment. A group of church ladies, led by gossip queen Betty Hargrove, shot Laura pointed looks as they discussed the article, their voices carrying, 15 months with that man in Jake's house? And using county records for fraud? Shameful. Laura's cheeks flushed, her hands trembling as she rearranged the lemon bars, but she kept smiling, clinging to the image she'd built. Sophie, standing nearby in her Sunday dress, sensed the tension and tugged at Laura's sleeve, asking, "Mom, why's everyone staring?" Laura snapped, "Just eat your pie, Sophie," her voice sharp enough to draw eyes. Across town, Jake sat in Carolyn's office listening to a voicemail Laura had left an hour ago, her voice a mix of fury and desperation. "You're ruining everything, Jake. spreading lies to the church, the paper. Ethan's asking questions, and Sophie's upset. I did this for us, for a better life with Derek, because I loved him before you. The admission hit Jake like a gut punch. Laura hadn't just fallen for Derek. She'd chosen him years ago, knowingly built their farmstead dream on fraud, and lied to their kids to erase Jake. His pain was raw, but Carolyn's grin was fierce. She's cracking, Jake, she said. That voicemail's gold, admitting complicity. We're sending it to Grayson, her lawyer, with a deposition demand. Jake nodded, his soldier's focus cutting through the hurt. Laura's slip was a weapon, and he'd use it. Carolyn had more. The county's launching an internal probe into Laura's filings thanks to our complaint. Derek's LLC is under IRS scrutiny, and his investor from Karen's footage? A known money launderer. The farmstead sale's frozen. Your forged signature sealed it. Jake's thoughts turned to Ethan and Sophie, caught in Laura's unraveling world. Ethan's texts last night reporting Laura's late-night arguments with Derek showed his loyalty, while Sophie's hesitant heart emoji hinted at doubt. The kids were slipping from Laura's control, and Lincoln's scorn was tightening the noose. Back at the potluck, Laura's facade crumbled further when Betty Hargrove approached, her voice loud. Laura, is it true you helped that Vaughn fella dodge taxes? My cousin at the clerk's office says you're suspended pending investigation. The hall went quiet, forks pausing mid-bite. Laura stammered, That's not true. But her eyes darted, betraying her. Sophie, red-faced, slipped out to the parking lot, texting Jake. Mom's acting weird. Everyone's mean. What's happening? Pastor Elaine stepped in, guiding Laura to a side room, her voice low but firm. We need to talk, Laura. This church stands for truth. Outside, the Journal-Star's evening edition hit doorsteps, its headline, Clerk's Fraud Linked to Local Scandal, cementing Laura's fall. Lincoln had turned, and the town's judgment was a tide she couldn't outrun. In the dim light of her home office, Laura sat hunched over a laptop, the glow illuminating her tired eyes as she scrolled through bank statements that confirmed her worst fears. It was Monday morning, 6 days since her text to Jake. Don't come home. The kids are better off without you, we're done. Unleashed a cascade of consequences. The Lincoln Journal-Star's headlines, church whispers, and Sophie's confused texts had shattered her facade. But the real blow came from Tina Brooks, Carolyn Tate's forensic accountant. Tina's email, forwarded by Laura's lawyer Harold Grayson, revealed Derek Vaughn had siphoned $300,000 from their farmstead fund to an offshore account, leaving Laura's $50,000 home equity loan and forged signatures exposed to the IRS. Derek had used her, and the dream of their $800,000 farmstead was a lie. Laura's hands shook as she dialed Derek, her third call that morning, each unanswered. His Lexus hadn't been at the house since the potluck fallout, and his text had stopped after a curt, handling things. She'd believed in Derek, her college love, trusting his promises of a new life with Ethan and Sophie. Now facing a county suspension and an IRS probe into her backdated filings, Laura saw the truth. Derek had played her, leveraging her county clerk access to cover his tax evasion while draining their funds. Her voicemail to Jake yesterday, admitting she'd loved Derek before him, was a desperate misstep. And Grayson's panicked call this morning, warning that Carolyn had the recording, pushed her to act. She needed to face Jake, to salvage something before the law closed in. At Rosie's diner, Laura waited in a corner booth, her usual poise replaced by a fidgeting nervousness as Jake walked in, his face unreadable. The diner's morning crowd buzzing with gossip about the Journal-Star's latest. Clerk faces fraud charges, cast sidelong glances. Jake, Laura started, her voice low. I messed up. Derek lied to me, took the money, everything. I thought he loved me, but I was wrong. Can we settle this? For the kids? Jake's eyes narrowed, his soldier's calm masking the pain of her betrayal. Settle, he said, voice steady. You forged my name, risked our home, and lied to Ethan and Sophie about me. You chose Derek, Laura, and now you're alone. I'm fighting for our kids, not you. Laura's face crumpled, tears welling. I didn't mean for this, she whispered. I wanted a better life like we had in college. Derek promised. Jake cut her off. You knew his scams, Laura. You signed the papers, hid the taxes. This isn't love, it's fraud. He stood, leaving her with a final word. Talk to Grayson. Carolyn's filing for full custody, and I won't back down. Laura sat frozen, the diner's clatter fading as her world shrank. She'd lost Jake, the kid's trust, and now Derek, who Karen Walsh's latest report confirmed was dodging calls and meeting a new investor in Omaha, likely planning to flee. Back at Carolyn's office, Tina Brooks laid out more evidence. Derek's offshore account was linked to a second LLC, and Laura's filings had hidden $40,000 in additional tax liabilities. She's facing felony charges, Tina said. The county's cooperating with the IRS, and Grayson's begging for a plea deal. Jake nodded, his focus on Ethan and Sophie. Ethan's texts, now daily, showed he was pulling away from Laura, while Sophie's latest message, I miss you, Dad. Mom's sad all the time, hinted at her shifting loyalty. Carolyn smirked. Laura's done, Jake. Derek's ghosting her, and the town's shut her out. Pastor Elaine even pulled her from the church choir. Laura returned home to a quiet house, Ethan at a friend's and Sophie at cheer practice, avoiding her. A letter from the county confirmed her suspension, and Grayson's email offered little hope. Admit guilt or face trial. She tried Derek again, but his number was disconnected. The farmstead, her dream with Derek, was gone, and Lincoln's cold shoulder, neighbors avoiding her at the grocery store, coffee shop baristas whispering, was her new reality. Jake, meanwhile, met Nate at a park, planning to pick up the kids for a weekend at his sister's, a step toward rebuilding. Laura's reckoning had come, and as her illusions shattered, Jake stood firm, ready to protect his family from the wreckage she'd left behind. The Lancaster County Courthouse stood quiet under a gray Nebraska sky, its limestone facade a solemn backdrop to the crowd gathered outside. Inside, on a crisp Tuesday morning 7 days after Laura's text, Don't come home. The kids are better off without you. We're done. The courtroom of Judge Margaret Hensley buzzed with anticipation. The saga of Laura's affair with Derek Vaughn, their $800,000 farmstead scheme built on forged loans, and the unraveling of their lies had gripped Lincoln. Today, the final chapter would unfold. Derek's arrest in an Omaha sting, Laura's plea hearing, and Jake Miller's fight for Ethan and Sophie. The Lincoln Journal-Star had dubbed it the Clerk's Conspiracy, and locals packed the gallery, whispering about justice and betrayal. Karen Walsh's investigation had broken the case wide open. Her footage of Derek meeting a money launderer in Omaha led to a federal sting, nabbing him with $200,000 in wired funds tied to his offshore account. The FBI's morning raid, splashed across Channel 8 News, showed Derek in handcuffs, his slick charm gone. Tina Brooks' forensic accounting sealed his fate, linking his second LLC to $400,000 in laundered profits, with Laura's backdated filings hiding $40,000 in taxes. Carolyn Tate, Jake's lawyer, stood ready, armed with Laura's voicemail admitting complicity, and bank records showing her $50,000 home equity loan fueling Derek U.S. fraud. Harold Grayson, Laura's lawyer, had pushed for a plea, knowing trial meant worse. Laura stood before Judge Hensley, her face pale, no trace of the poised county clerk who once charmed church potlucks. Mrs. Miller, Hensley began, her voice steady, you've pleaded guilty to felony fraud and forgery. Your actions betrayed public trust and your family. Laura's eyes dropped, her hands clasped tightly. Grayson argued for leniency, Laura's cooperation, her role as a mother, but Hensley was unmoved. You endangered your children's future and abused your office, she said. The sentence, 18 months in prison, $90,000 in restitution, and permanent loss of her clerk position. Gasps rippled through the gallery as Laura was led away, her glance at Sophie and Ethan, seated with Jake, heavy with regret. Sophie's eyes teared, but Ethan's face stayed hard, his trust long gone. Jake's custody hearing followed, a quieter affair but no less pivotal. Carolyn presented Ethan's texts, Sophie's messages, and Pastor Elaine's testimony about Laura's lies, painting Jake as an absent father. Mr. Miller served his country and returned to a stolen home, Carolyn argued. He's the stability Ethan and Sophie need. Judge Hensley, A mother herself nodded thoughtfully. Laura's absence, Derek's arrest, and the kids' statements, Ethan's firm, "I want Dad," Sophie's hesitant, "Mom messed up," tipped the scales. Jake was granted full custody, with Laura's visitation pending parole. The gallery, filled with church friends and Nate Larson, clapped softly, a rare Midwest show of support. Outside, the Journal Star's evening edition hit stands. Clerk sentenced. Veteran wins custody in fraud scandal. Lincoln's gossip mill slowed, satisfied by justice. Jake took Ethan and Sophie to a new rental home near Lincoln High, a modest 2-story with a yard for Ethan S. rocket launches and space for Sophie S. cheer gear. Over pizza that night, Ethan opened up about Laura's late-night fights with Derek, while Sophie admitted she'd deleted her TikTok posts flaunting his gifts. "I'm sorry, Dad," she said, hugging him. Jake's heart swelled, the pain of Laura's betrayal easing in their laughter. Laura, in a holding cell, faced a stark future. Grayson's final letter outlined her parole conditions and restitution plan, but Lincoln had moved on. Pastor Elaine organized a church fundraiser for Jake's legal fees, and neighbors dropped off casseroles, a Midwest nod to his resilience. Derek's trial loomed, with federal charges promising years behind bars. The farmstead, frozen by the county, was auctioned to repay victims, its red barn a fading dream. Jake, Ethan, and Sophie drove past it one evening, the kids quiet but content. "We're okay now, right?" Ethan asked. Jake smiled, gripping the wheel. "Yeah, buddy. We're home." Lincoln's field stretched wide, and under that vast sky, Jake's family began anew, built on truth and the strength to rebuild.